If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to
I'm talking
die
about
for.
tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unheard.
Hello.
Well, today we're going to have a conversation in the bill that we're going to deal with. If y'all have been following us, we've been putting together what we call a Panther map, a war map. And in this war map, essentially what we've done is we've went into the mission of the chairman, what we call the Commission of Liberation. Then we went into the chairman building the central committee, the staff, the extensions of the chairman's Commission of Liberation. Now we're going to talk about building the soldier that's coming into the party. Now, a lot of people, especially chairmen and people in leadership, this is something that you need to really pay attention to and build on and study on, because we get into the habit of thinking that when a person decides to join an organization, they're conscious, that they are there, and that they know what needs to be done. But one of the things that I think we fail to realize is that we're dealing with a population that has been intentionally miseducated, misled, and confused about their position in the world. This has been done intentionally. So even the quote unquote revolutionaries have this psychological issue. In order to make any kind of real change, we have to make a change in our paradigm. A change has to be brought about in our thinking and our life philosophy. So when a member comes into an organization like the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, the UNIA, or any other organization, one of the things we have to understand is why they may be somewhat conscious or have somewhat of a level of understanding of what's going on, they're really coming into those organizations as a training ground. The organization needs to operate as a university to be able to educate and build up the brother or the sister that's coming into the operation so they can do their real job. Because one of the things we have to understand is that a revolutionary's job is not to make revolution. The people make revolution. The revolutionary's job is to guide the people down the correct path of revolution. And the only way a revolutionary can do that is with the correct ideology, with the correct life paradigm, the correct mindset. And that's one of the things that we believe that the party owes the average person walking into the party, is that training to develop their correct mindset so that they can do the job of a revolutionary. And that is what we're going to build on today. We're going to build on the mindset that needs to be inside of a person who decides to take on this work. And so we're going to deal with ideology. We're going to deal with a concept called what a revolutionary is, and we're going to deal with certain characteristics and principles that a revolutionary needs to be willing to stand on. So to take this thing off, we're going to allow the Black Joker to build on the concept of ideology, what ideology is, and the proper framework or ideology that a Panther should have instilled into their thinking as they go out into the community to liberate the people.
I can tell you that ideology being the mental guiding force of what the feet do, whatever your ideas, your perspectives, your interpretation of what is and what should be is going to be that which determines which direction you walk. And for us, it became clear to us, it became clear years and years ago that the situation that we deal with is a multifaceted, all of these different faces of understanding, and because it's part of a process, and realizing that our emphasis was to apply the idea of a gorilla, that part of the gorilla that allows it to be ambiguous and to absorb and to grow and to evolve over time. That was a driving force as the ideology, or what we used to call it, proper Panther ideology, grew out of, was that need to adapt, to flow, to roll, to include as much of the perspective, much of the information, much of the context that we face as a people within this struggle. And first on that list of the four ideologies of which there are five, but we don't talk about number five because nobody ever asks. So the foundational, again, coming from a process orientation, the first step is living in such a superficial, surface level, visually dependent culture. It only makes sense that when you walk into a room, say it's like a job function or whatever, and it's just full of white people, I know in the back of my head, in the front of my head, because that's how I am, I'm looking for somebody black. I'm looking for somebody familiar. If it's like at a work function, it's a bunch of people, I'm looking for somebody from the area that I work in, but even better, somebody black because of that connection, because of that surface level. Don't know this black dude I just saw across the room, but I know at the very basics of it, there is a connection because he looks like me. And that's all that black nationalism really is based on, is the visualizing of that one thing that we can all still relate to, that surface level, acknowledging the bottom rung. This is where we have to start, is just realizing, recognizing that we are at least on the surface connected, and then build from that, organize around that. And one of the things that we as a people, because of our miseducation here in this country, and this entire system globally at this point, um, is this sense that it's one or the other, that it that we're pitted against each other because we've crystallized, because we've grounded ourselves in a singular ideology. Black nationalists refute Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanists refute Black nat. There's chasm, there's split, there's divide, in which all of these different little pieces have fallen on the ground. And in an attempt to put them back together, we have to understand that it's not one or the other. Moving into Pan-Africanism, which is the next part of our process, is simply broadening that horizon. It does not reject Black nationalism. It is an outgrowth of Black nationalism. It is the internationalizing and the removal of time constraints, of the idea that we are one. No longer am I identifying with you just because our skin tone is the same, or just because I can see you, but I'm now applying a similar idea to those sisters and brothers in the diaspora, those before me, those that come after, realizing and recognizing that it's more than a superficial recognition that Black nationalism introduces or is based on. It's now something broader than that, something that reaches across all of the artificial boundaries that we've placed in, or been taught to place in between us. And so it's just an outgrowth, and Pan-Africanism reaches around the globe and acknowledges that, yes, we are all connected. We all have these same similarities to build on. The idea that Chancellor Williams talked about, that all spiritual systems on the continent are essentially the same. They're the same system, they just look different. They're based on the same ideas because we're the same people and have an outgrowth. There are so many things that you can pick up on the continent, pick up the something similar in this country, and they match, whether it's the rhythms and the words and the vibes, or it's the intellect and the skill set and the abilities, the desire to grow, the desires. Some things that have actually worked against us, our political naivete, both on the continent and here. We are both very naive in our idea, in our not being able to accept that there are people who can behave the way these other folks have behaved. We believed it then, we believe it now, and it's something that has constantly held us back, our refusal to accept that they've shown us who they are. So there are things that unite us, whether we want to embrace them or not, whether they're good or they're bad, romanticized or not, that intertwine and connect us globally. The culture is the same, and the culture comes from the same people. Um, Black liberation theology being the third of the isms, is this idea that if your God can't speak to you in your own language, then it's not your God. That realizing that the stories in whatever religious system, from Islam to Judaism, Christianity, all of that, have to be told from our perspective. They have to speak to our pain. They have to turn Moses into Harriet Tubman and know that she was the one that was freeing the people. Organizations like the Shrine of the Black Madonna, and where you would expect to see an Ankh in a church. It's a church. Albert Klieg, no, not Klieg. Forget the brother's name. I'm gonna have to look him up. It's been a minute since I've been in on that information. Um, but the Shrine of the Black Madonna, when you enter the church, is where you would expect to see a cross. You see an Ankh. So it's it's causing whatever scripture you use, not telling you to be a Christian or a Muslim or anything else, but making sure that is a reflection or is places our experience within those stories, has those stories speak to what it is we've gone to, as opposed to stories about a foreign people, and those stories not speaking to our interests, to our liberation, to our growth, to our development. And finally, African-centered thought. Once upon a time, yeah, they like to call it. I guess when it first came out, the book is called Afrocentricity, Asante by the brother Asante. But at some point, someone realized that an afro is a hairstyle, and to build an ideology around that is not an effective move. That just the language of calling attention to a hairstyle and reducing our experience to a hairstyle was counter-revolutionary. And so it gradually over time evolved to the idea of African-centered thought, which essentially, again, just builds on all the other ideologies and placing us in the middle, looking at the world from our own perspective, making the events they keep saying that Palestine is the greatest, or at one time Yemen was the greatest humanitarian crisis in the world. In reality, it's not. It's the Congo. If we are looking at the world from our perspective, no, our pain in the Congo and Sudan and other places is what is the greatest humanitarian crisis in the world. Those are the problems. We see our struggles on the continent and any place else just as important, carrying just as much weight as anybody else on the face of the planet, whether they're in Palestine or Ukraine or wherever they are. That our suffering, the pain that we've gone through, as well as our greatness and the things that we've done, are paramount and are front and center in our worldview. Because everything that happens has to come through the filter of how does this affect us and how will we affect it, as opposed to looking at somebody else's business and projecting ourselves into it, making our business our first business. I guess that's it.
And I'll come in to kind of answer the question that you asked in the beginning, Brother E. You talked about ideology. I'm not going to go deep into a complex etymology of it, but ideology simply means the science of ideals. And when we utilize it to talk about ideology from a social standpoint, well, think about we're driving in a car, we're driving in a vehicle. The vehicle is your life. So we're driving in this vehicle called life, and you have this front windshield. Essentially, the front windshield is your ideology. Everything you see in front of you is filtered through the windshield, and that's the ideology, the paradigm that a human being operates off of. It's a set of beliefs, ideals, concepts, politically and economic ideas, social ideas that a human being moves and makes decisions from. And the thing about an ideology, it's not necessarily always true. Sometimes a person could give you a false ideology, and that's why people will intentionally miseducate people that they wish to oppress or to control. It becomes the responsibility of that people, hence the responsibility of the revolutionary, to make sure that they're able to develop and give the people an ideology that benefits the group, that benefits the people. And so that's what we're talking about when we're dealing with concepts and ideas like ideology. He just broke down and explained to us four ideologies that the Panther Party, that the new Black Panther Party in the early 2000s, late 1990s pulled together, because we saw these ideologies being used and seen as conflicting things. But we was able to look at these various ideologies and see that they all was needed in the development and the upliftment of the people. So we brought them together as Panther ideology. All of these ideologies are separate. And you'll find, as Brother E just said, you'll find a brother that's a staunch Black nationalist that'll tell you that's the answer, not Pan-Africanism. You'll find a brother that's a staunch Pan-Africanist that'll tell you that's the answer, not Black nationalism. We always use this concept when we talk about the U.S. and the Oakland Black Panther Party back in the day, how they had conflict between each other. And one of them took the more revolutionary line of thought that came from Malcolm X. The other took the more Afrocentric line of thought that came from Malcolm X, and they was in conflict with one another when both lines of thought are actually supposed to operate together. Because those two different ways of thinking is what made that one man that we like to call our shining black prince. We took those ideals and we tore them apart, and we removed the prince out of the concept, and it simply doesn't make sense. So what we did is we saw those various ideas and we placed them together, because black nationalism doesn't conflict with Pan-Africanism. As E just said, black nationalism is more of a nationalist way of seeing things. We have to start identifying our people, ourselves, our culture, and start seeing our needs first. But then you start to evolve and you take that to an international viewpoint. You don't just look at the right here and the right now. Some black nationalists say we have a unique experience as new Africans, and they're right. They're not wrong about that. What E is saying with Pan Africanism is we don't let that unique experience make us forget what happened in the past, our future experience, and our experience with our people internationally. Because when we are able to wrap our mind around the concept that we are a global people, we'll no longer accept the idea that we're some minority, because we understand that we're a global majority and we are everywhere on this planet, 196,940,000 square miles. Pan Africanism allows you to see that and visualize that, and therefore turn your black nationalism into an international concept and idea. So that's where these ideologies come from. Now, E, you say no one ever asked about the fifth. So I'm gonna ask, what is the fifth? You say people only talk about the four, but it's a five, but nobody ever ask about it. What is the fifth? Let's walk into that door.
Well, I mean, fifth is the I guess the all-encompassing thread that holds all of it together. The idea, the ideology, just as well, I guess we both touched on it and kind of walked through or ran through, is the idea that the whole is greater than each of these parts. That all of these parts have to be and more. This is not the totality. This is a part of the growth process. But the idea that we have to be able to not only recognize and connect, but able to move back and forth through them. There are times when the concept of black nationalism is more appropriate, and there are times when a Pan African. There are situations where a Pan African approach is more appropriate. And it's just like the principles of Kwanzaa. I've had sisters and brothers from the continent become, get very confused and not understand why these seven principles, the Nguzo Saba, why, what, why are we talking about celebrating things like, self-determination and cooperative economics and all of these things? Not that we're wrong, but because of the context that they came up in, because of where they were born and the culture that they grew up in were are a part of. All of these things were they just are. They exist. They don't have to be okay. This is collective or cooperative economics. This is how we do da da da, and broken down because they grow up experiencing it. They grow up living it and learning it and being it. So to sit back and call these out is kind of foreign to a lot of sisters and brothers coming from that background. It's the same thing with the ideology. These ideas have to be pulled out and delineated, not for the sake of separating them, but for the sake of separating them so that we can see how better to put them together and see how they flow together and how they're supposed to operate together, how they're supposed to be complementary. And I think the best example is Black liberation theology. One thing that we cling to as Black folk, whatever it is we do, is understandably is the idea, the concept of God. Somewhere in the conversation, that's going to come up, regardless of the Black folks that you talk to. And again, that's a cultural something that we could look at from the continent around the globe. It's a truth for all African organizations and whatnot. You have a conversation with two or three or four, big organizations, it's going to come up. But this separation where, my belief system is the way. This is how we're going to do it versus no, my belief system is the way. This is how we're going to do it, whether it's the nation, whether it's the Hebrew Israelite, all of these organizations, all of these ideas and concepts are at odds with one another because we're not looking, we've been taught the opposition. We've been taught to oppose. We've been taught to be the ops or to recognize the ops instead of understanding the complement. It don't sound nearly as cool, but the comms. The interaction is, you want to say ops, I'm going to say comms. Comms. The comms in between the complementary nature of, and their part in the process of the Israelites or the nation or whomever, not seeing how they're supposed to blend in. And so none of them, the Hebrew Israelites, not the nation, none of them are truly Black liberation theology in the sense of a finished product. They are a step in the process. If you just look at Malcolm's life, Malcolm started out again, the story, penitentiary and Nation of Islam, Elijah, and all of that, and he began to recognize this commonality on a visual, on a Black national, on a very right here, right now level approach. But as he grew and became more international, he began recognizing the bigger picture, the greater part of it, and so no. None of these ideologies can be a Black liberation theology as an end state as long as we're in the situation that we're in. They're all just a step because we all still speak English. Nation, you still pray toward Mecca, speak Arabic. We are all still tied in with these systems into something that does not point us to us. So they're all battle stations, essentially. They're ways to combat the system. They're ways to combat the oppressive culture. They're ways to develop and to grow, but they're not end states. They're not, you being a Muslim who says Black power is not the goal. It's not the goal. The goal is to not need that shit. That's the goal, for it to just be understood day to day in life. You don't have to say, oh, God is a Black man. What of course he is. What are you talking about? That's the end state. If somebody says that, it's redundant. Like, we already know that. Why are you telling me this? That's the end state, for it to be just a given. It's like the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. You take that to an ancient African way back in the day and give him some 10 commandments with them being unprepped, sight unseen. Just, here you go, 10 commandments. Thou shalt honor thy mother and father. For the African, it's like, what? And like, yeah, that's a given. That's what you're supposed to do. We don't have to be told that. So all of these are just not are parts of the process. They're not the end state. They're not the goal. But we've been taught that that is the goal. The finger pointing at the moon is the goal. Just recognize that someone's pointing at something and you've arrived. Just like Black nationalism saying, I support Black business. That's it. That, for this system, for this culture, that's the goal. To say those words, that's it. There is nothing behind it. There is no substance to that. I mean, you know what I mean? So we've been taught that, each of these isms is the goal. And the reality of it is that's completely not what it is.
Let me jump in this real quick and try to align something, because I think, and I want to just kind of go back to what Syke started out saying about a person driving, because I think oftentimes what attracts somebody, a false sense of attraction to want to be a member of the Black Panther Party, is that I come into some state of awareness that there needs to be a change. Something has to happen. I'm tired of the condition of oppression that I'm facing. So with that, oftentimes, you can go into the concept of the driving a vehicle. A person to jump in their car and they'll take off. They're doing it because they want to get away from what's hurting them, want to get away from the things that are oppressing them, bothering them. They don't have a specific destination. They just running away. And oftentimes it is in that moment of vulnerability that a person realizes, hey, something got to change. I want to be a part of change. And they think back on, hey, well, let me join the Black Panther Party. The problem with that state of consciousness is that is just basically you realizing or coming into the realization that things are not right. That don't mean that you have what we refer to as intent. Just because I jump in a vehicle to escape something don't mean that I recognize a path that leads me to a specific destination. And so when we talk about the isms from that degree, we're talking about all of the different components that make up going into what I think about when I think about the fifth one, which is talking about our spirit, revolutionary collective direct action, which takes you into the concept of rebuilding the embodiment of the Black identity and all components and all aspects of what it takes to be a complete whole people. But the first aspect of that is the realization that whatever is in place right now is not going to free us. And so coming into that aspect of realization may actually attract me to want to be a part of the Black Panther Party. But am I actually joining the Black Panther Party at this moment because I have an intention on what it looks like to be operating within the realm of revolutionary collective direct action? Most likely, I don't even get it. Most likely, kind of speaking on the other four components, I may be familiar with the background of Black liberation theology, African-centered thought, Pan-Africanism or Black nationalism, but have I been living that? Has that actually been my life? Have I been operating through what we call the elements, the earth, the earth, air, water, fire, whatever? Have I been operating through these? Have I used them to their full capacity? Probably not. So what we're looking for is somebody that is what we call willing, able, and ready to embody. With the stages embody, spirit, and the shadow of a panther. Are you willing to make yourself become total, become whole, and serve through intentional means a path of revolutionary growth and serve as that example for the people? So the problem that we run into is that simply because I'm on an emotional charge and I see a need for change because I don't like what's happening to me right now, don't mean that I am ready for total transformation. This path of isms are basically an intentional path to get us to start walking where we need to go to take us toward operating through freedom. And simply because I jump in my car, start it up and crank it up and zoom down the street, don't mean that I have an intentional place of where I'm going. Don't mean that I have an actual destination. Don't mean I know how to get there. Don't mean I even know I want to get there. I just want to get away from what the condition is that I've been handed. And we find our people in a state of destitute because they just want to get away from oppression. One of the first aspects of that is I realize that, you know what, I'm not a capitalist. So maybe I'm an anti-capitalist. So being an anti-capitalist or seeing imperialism for what it is means that I don't want to actively participate in this no more. But that doesn't mean that I have what it takes to be a Black Panther. Simply because I don't like the current system don't mean that I am ready for something new, to be a part of something new, to operate through something new. So there are things that we have to be willing to go through and things that we have to be willing to shed in order to be a Panther. And so when the candidates that we're looking for are people that are willing to make transformation life changes.
You exactly what you needed to hear. That's all. Neo, sooner or later you're going to realize, just as I did, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
And operate through that embodiment of those changes. It's simple, it's not as simple as just simply providing someone with the blueprint, because the blueprint is there. But how many of us embody that? How many of us are willing to make those lifelong sacrifices? This is also why in past videos we emphasize so much the importance of revolutionary suicide, because you have to kill that old nigga in you. You have to kill that past. You have to be willing to let go of everything that is attaching you to the actual very oppression that you claim you don't do you don't agree with anymore. That you want to be a part of something different. But to be a part of something different as it applies to that, means you have to live a different lifestyle. You can't just talk it, but you have to live it. And so revolutionary suicide is just that first conditional step. Go ahead, E.
So I saw right now I'm into like when I'm one of the last things I like to do in the evening is peruse through YouTube and look. Sometimes I'm looking at mafia history. Sometimes like right now I'm into evangelical. The big churches, Creflo and all of them. Different little scandals and how the empires got beat up and all of it and whatnot. One of the things they were talking about was the self-help stuff, like the what was that the one that kind of set it off years ago. The little book. What was the name of that book? Law of Attraction and all of that stuff was in there. Y'all know what I'm talking. The
You talk
Secret.
about The Secret.
Yeah, The Secret. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking again because it's an old thought, but visiting it again, and I'm seeing that it's some of the same idea. If they say law of attraction, okay, that's a truth, but there's no breakdown, explanation, understanding that that can be given in that book. It's just stating it. And again, because we're superficial, we run with it and think because I have these words and the superficial definition of it that I've got the thing. When in reality, exactly what Ward is saying is it. You have to live it. You have to be it. And that takes a lifetime, not a book. That takes a lifetime of struggle with oneself. If, like the brother said, if you want a different situation, if you want different things around you, you have to be different. And that's where the application that you can't get in a book that tells you, okay, this is what it is. Okay, now you understand. It takes a lifetime. People spend their entire lives in the pursuit of growth, true growth and development. And if it's not a painful struggle, you're not struggled. If it's not a painful series of events, then you're really not walking that path. You're just mimicking some words, because that's one thing that's absolutely consistent throughout all of this is that there's pain involved. And part of that growth process is understanding the difference between pain and harm and being able to separate the two and understand what is beneficial pain and what is pain that's telling you you need to get the hell out of here. Two different things. So living the lifestyle, preparing food and sandwiches to give to the homeless and whatnot, having them spit on you or get pissed at you because you're doing it, but still doing it. Those are the types of, and not having that knee-jerk reaction of, throwing your hands up or swinging at somebody or all of those things, but being able to identify the symptoms of what it is we've gone through. And that only comes through the application and the living of these things. So if someone is not working toward that understanding and developing that and wanting to get from under, to sacrifice, to push away, because and again, things go from sacrifice to choice in the blink of an eye. At one point, something that you are sacrificing to do this and these other things becomes just a choice. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going this way, because now it's becoming, again, it's embodying and it's living the seven principles of blackness or the isms or whatever it is. That's the application of it. Once you go from a point where it hurts, where it's sacrificing these things over here in order to do something else, once that hurdle has been crossed, it's not painful anymore. It's just simply something you choose not to do. I choose not to, go out and spend money on restaurants or, TVs and all that. And at first it was like, man, I'm gonna miss, Xbox this or big screen that or whatever. But over time, it just becomes, okay, I'm not worried about that. That's not a part of my life anymore. And that type of idea has to be applied across the board for anybody that's wanting to really develop and grow into this or any other ideology.
Well, Let's go into a bill. This bill that I'm about to open up is called Healing the Community and Serving the People. Because we are talking about what a revolutionary really is. And one of the things that both of the brothers just showed y'all, and I don't know if y'all know how to tie all the videos together that we've been doing, but pay attention to what we've been doing. First, we did a series where we built on revolutionary suicide. So we talked about the brother or the sister waking up to some degree and realizing, hey, I don't like the way things are going. I want to participate in something in a vehicle that will allow me to exercise my political thoughts and make some kind of positive change. Well, the first thing you have to do, and people, I don't think people understand this, you have to commit revolutionary suicide. Cause let me show you what is happening. Many of y'all watching this, you done seen this, you done experienced this. I know for a fact, Brother Warren, Brother E have seen and experienced this. And probably the first time that they saw it, just like myself, we didn't know what we was looking at. But you have people that are coming to the party, adorn the uniform, adorn the beret, grab them a rifle, and they willing to do all the rifle training, the shoot training, the gun ranging. They willing to do all the combat dressing. They willing to do, but they don't want to read the books. They come into the party and they have not killed the nigga self. So nobody seems to understand why the party cannot be effective. Because the very thing that you say that you woke up from and that you want to change, you carry into your revolutionary lifestyle. You don't sacrifice it. You don't allow the nigga to be crucified. And that's what's required. You have to kill that selfish, individualistic nigga self through revolutionary suicide. And revolutionary suicide takes place by allowing your ideology, your current ideology that you have gotten from the oppressor to be crucified and allowing the new ideology, as Brother E just explained, the four isms and the fifth, or if you go deeper and understand the deepness in what's being said, those different elements that earth, wind, fire, water, and then spirit, that element of it, when Brother E said there's a fifth that no one ever talks about, it's when you're actually living free. If you understand what was just explained, it's when you're actually living free. You don't need a format. You don't need a commandment. You don't need a rule telling you not to do this and do this. When you're in a savage state, you need those laws. That's why Moses in the scripture took children of Israel those 10 commandments, because they was in their savage state. They were still on the state where they had to put gold together and make a calf so they can see some physical thing that they had to pray to make them feel centered. They were still there. But when you're past that and you understand that God emanates and manifests from within, you don't need anything to look at. You know, looking inside does the trick. Looking over at your brother, your sister, your wife, or your husband does the trick. You see God when you look at your child. You don't have to make a fake calf. And this is what the brothers are talking about. That we have to be willing. The revolutionary has to kill the nigga self, because the revolutionary doesn't make revolution. The people do. The revolutionary has to be in a mind state and have a proper ideology that he can go give to the people to stir the people toward the correct direction of revolution. And this is what we're going to build in right now in serving the people. All right, y'all, let's look at this. So what we're building on right here is healing the community and serving the people. That's just a cool way of saying being a revolutionary. Because this is what a revolutionary is. And I'm gonna quote some of our old school revolutionaries that we build on this and break this down. And I'm gonna open the floor and let the brothers come in and give commentary to this so we can get a better explanation and understanding. But anyway, Huey P. Newton taught that the job of the revolutionary is to raise the consciousness of the people. Because of this, the revolutionary must be a multi talented human being. The job of the revolutionary is to raise the consciousness of the people. This is extremely important. And so, because of this, the revolutionary must have different talents. The revolutionary must be a Renaissance person. So, the first thing it says the revolutionary must be a teacher. Because we just said, and I think most of y'all agree with me that the revolutionary does not make revolution. The people make revolution. The revolutionary is a small percentage of black people. The revolutionary is probably 5% of the black population. And only 5% of that 5% is really true, down, staunch revolutionaries. So you got 5% of the black population that has some inkling of these ideas, and 5% of that 5% are the real ones that are actually willing to dedicate their life to this work. You understand what I'm saying? So when you understand this, you have to be able to guide the people. When I was deployed, Brother, you like to call it vacation. I say it's a hiatus. But when I was deployed to the gulags of America to educate and build with our brothers in those conditions because our brothers didn't have it. You know, nothing that I did or no time that I stood up against the administration in those places was no success was due to my own power, my own authority. Matter of fact, if I would have went down there and thinking I know Panther history and Panther ideology, I'm gonna buck the system alone, I would have failed every step of the way. But instead of doing that, what I did was I took teachings and lessons that I developed while I was in the party and started teaching it to the people, changing their ideology, and started guiding the people down the correct path of revolution. So the people had the ability to stand against the administration when the administration was out of line. The people had the ability to exert their power. And that power was respected for the most part because of the ideology that those brothers had gained. So the first, we're going to start with a teacher. As a teacher, the revolutionary must teach the people how to develop those beautiful qualities that are innately in them. This is done through proper education in the major areas of human activity. A revolutionary must not only understand the people he or she is attempting to teach, but must teach them in ways that they understand. One of Huey's famous quotes is that the people learn through observation and participation. The community is essentially not a reading community. To get people to read your material, you must first give them activity to observe that they respect and eventually can participate in. The people will not listen to you if you are not addressing issues that they are aware of that directly affect their lives. Now, listen to the way I said that. Not that you, if you're not addressing issues that directly affect their life, but if you're not addressing issues that they are aware of that directly affect their life. Because the people are not necessarily aware of every issue that directly affects their life. So you could be on point. You could literally be on an issue that matters, that counts. If the people don't understand that, kind of like a 8 Ball and MJG quote, 8 Ball said, he's
Other fool with dreads growing from his head. He trying to tell me about some shit Farrakhan said. I try to listen cause they ball ain't the one to knock it. But I can't hear over the echo from my empty pocket.
And so you have to understand that you have to be addressing issues that the people are aware of that directly affect them in order for them to even be willing to give you their ear. So it says, so for the most part, the people are politically unsophisticated. So you have to educate them about the things that truly affect their lives. They must first be guided by surface level social issues. You got it, y'all. As a revolutionary, y'all have to understand this. The people must first be guided by surface level social issues, things that they can clearly see that affect their life before you take them into those deeper things that truly are more important, but it doesn't even matter because they can't see it. Y'all want to chime in on this before I go into the six principal steps of teaching?
Yeah, let me jump on that real quick and just say this. That goes to the fact that uh, uh, we're going to first and foremost need to see our immediate needs addressed. And those are the small minor victories that take somebody out of their current emotional state to into the ability to be able to now have time, have the ability and have the patience to be able to deal with something from a long-term perspective. We have to realize as it applies to the weaponization of creating a being against self, being against what you are and who you are, and operating from the awareness of a holistic being. The first thing I want to do is destroy and tear down your ability to be able to survive, your ability to be able to endure the current condition. And I want to put you on a basically a back and forth, always on the edge of despair in as it applies to that. So when you want to dominate a people and oppress the people and keep a people in a condition, you have to control their aspects of food, clothing, and shelter. And see, this is why I wanted when we talk about our platform within the Black Panther Party, we realize that those basic needs have to be addressed. Because, like you said with that one quote, if if I'm not in the right headspace because these immediate needs are not getting addressed, which are the things that I need to just operate on a day-to-day level, how can I be in the right space, the right place to be able to deal with something long term? In order to manipulate and control the population, you have to keep them in a place to where they can think long term. They can think about advancement. They can think about the next generation, which is why at the core of what we build when you talk about the continuity of the Panther, which is why we even talking about recruitment process in the first place, means that in addressing the continuity of the Panther, I'm looking down the line in terms of generational, what we call foundational generational advancement. I realize that the work that needs to be done is not going to be something that's going to be accomplished overnight. But if I am hungry right now, if I need clothing right now, if I need basic economics so that I can put food on the table right now, I can't worry about the future because I may die at this very moment. I'm suffering at a critical level right now, to where tomorrow I can't even focus on what's going to happen tomorrow because I can't get through. I can't see how I'm gonna get through today. And this is where you want people to be. This is just a basic playbook when you talk about oppressing the masses of the people. You keep them inundated with day-to-day grinding to the point to where there's no room to look to the future. And so we have to realize that when we talk about the state of our people, that if you're stepping into the realm of being a revolutionary, you're stepping into the realm of of organizing for the sake of making complete constructive change, that you have to at least also have what we call decolonization programs to be able to address the basic needs of the people, and then you politicize them along the way. That's it.
And I think that's a fundamental function of Black nationalism is grabbing those emotional events that we can identify with. You know, we see somebody getting messed up by the pigs. I can identify, oh, that dude is getting thrown around and has his life in danger and whatnot. It looks like me. This is the fundamental. I can identify with the children that are getting messed up in the schools because it's right here. So the function, you know, of Black nationalism is to take control of our communities. That's the fundamental basis of it, is taking control of our communities. And so what we can identify with are those things that go on in our community. So Black nationalism is best poised to begin that process, to begin to connect the dots for folks so that they have a functional, ideological, philosophical foundation to begin to continue, not to begin, but to continue to evolve along a certain path that begins to pull in and weave together things that are outside the immediacy, going from just local police brutality to realizing what a man giving a Nazi salute next to the president, how that is intimately involved in me. Understanding further what is going on with Traore. I know I messed his name up. I lost my African tongue again. But what's happening in Sudan and the Sahel states over on the continent, we begin to understand that my local purchasing and going to work and whatnot, how those things affect what's going on over there and vice versa. So it's a step in the process. It's not the end game. It's a part. It's an entryway. It's an entry level. It's coming in and getting the fundamentals of how the company is supposed to work, and then building on that culture.
Mm. True indeed. So I'm gonna give y'all the six principles of teaching. Principal steps of teaching from Bruce Lee. Now remember, a revolutionary is not just some guy walking down the street with a gun. To truly be able to be a revolutionary and to continue as a revolutionary, you have to be a teacher. You have to be a teacher first and foremost. If you hate reading, you cannot really call yourself a revolutionary. If you hate teaching and healing the lost mind of the people, you cannot really call yourself a revolutionary. So let's look at it. The principal steps of teaching, the six principal steps: to one, motivating the trainee. Two, maintaining their complete attention. And I'm expecting War to be able to expound on these a little bit because War is a martial artist. Matter of fact, I'm expecting E too because E is a teacher. It's his natural passion and desire. But Bruce Lee said one is motivating the trainee. Two is maintaining their complete attention. Three is promoting mental activity, thinking by discussion, questions, and lecture. You promote them to think. Don't just spit information at them, but ask questions. Get them to think. Get them activities to think. I remember when I first came into the party, one of the things that really stuck out to my mind was a mind map kind of that E drew on a board. I think he said he got it from Asher Kwasi. And the mind map had 4 dots making a square. And E asked us to use 3 straight lines to connect our 4 dots. And one of the things that we could not do it because we kept trying to operate within the framework of the 4 dots. And he never made that a rule. The rule was never that you cannot come outside of the 4 dots. The rule was connect all 4 dots, use 3 straight lines to do it, and you cannot crisscross across each other. 3 straight lines, connect all 4 dots. That was essentially your rule. And all lines had to be connected at each end of one another. Those was the rules that we have. We had the totality of every other idea in the known universe to use to make this happen, and we stymied ourselves and our own ability to perform the task because we placed a rule on ourselves that we weren't even aware that we had been trained to have, that we have to operate within the box, and he never put that restriction on us. So you have to, and by doing that, what he did was he promoted mental activity. He was promoting thinking. We was able to actually build and create a discussion and actually participate in understanding how far we had been lost instead of somebody just telling it to us. Anyway, 4 is outlining the material. We can't freestyle the liberation of the people. We have to actually develop agendas and structures that the people are going to go through, an actual educational system. 5 is developing comprehension of the significance, the implications, and the practical applications of the material. Developing a comprehension of the significance, the importance, the implications, how it affects us, and the practical application, how we can actually use it in our real life of the material. 6 is repetition of the 5 steps, basically to do them over and over and over again. It'll never stop. For a while, I used to be surprised that I was steady having to reteach people or even build with people. I was in when I talked about my deployment, I was building with brothers. I had a brother literally tell me, "How are you gonna try to get me to believe that Egypt used to be black?" He said, "That don't even make sense when ain't nothing over there but Arab looking people right now. How does that even make sense?" And I stopped and looked at the brother and I said, "How are you going to get me to believe that America used to be Native American? When I look around, it ain't nothing but white people and black people walking around all over the place." And he just stopped because he never thought about it like that. And he was like, wow. And then I went to breaking down the whole concept of colonization and imperialism and things like this. Now he could see it, he could understand it. But we're going to have to repeat these steps over and over and over again. I would taught these lessons at around 18, 19 years old. But I was reteaching them to somebody in my 40s, and this person was 30 some years old. So these lessons have to be constantly followed. Any of y'all want to get in on these 6 principles?
Yeah, I start off real quick on just motivating the trainee. I think that just even goes into what I was saying earlier, just in regards to what we call immediate victories. Oftentimes when I'm lost, when I'm not realizing that I have a self-defeative mentality, I don't know where to start. So coming into the movement, coming into this awareness as a teacher, I need to be able to get people to do what I call self-reflect. First and foremost, realize what self-reflection is. That I'm able to go into myself, see see my current condition, and see the roadblocks, the things that cause me to be stifled in growth, which is kind of like that one exercise that we talked about. Because once I realize, damn, I'm actually my biggest roadblock, because I'm frozen in terms of in terms of my own mental liberation and what that means and how to get out of that box, that I'm constantly putting myself back in the cage. So part of the motivating the trainee goes into being able to have these little minor moments of awareness that lets me see that, oh, okay, things are changing. I am actually benefiting from this. I just need to be patient with the process. So I have to be able to show them the minor steps of progression that they're taking, and use that to help, again, going into self-reflection, to help to see the progress. So I have to get everyone to realize that, yes, this is nice. This is rewarding. this is good. I have to make you feel good about the fact that you're in the process of doing something. No matter how small of a step that you've taken, the idea here is that I'm getting you to self-reflect and love yourself. See, one of the biggest components that a lot of us don't get is that we have been taught how not to love ourselves. We have been taught to hate who we are. That self-hate is what causes us to kill one another in the community. So I have to be able to identify what it is about myself that is constantly causing me to kill myself through the concept of what we call reactionary suicide. What am I doing to myself? Because as long as I'm damaging myself, then there's no way I can reach out and help others. So that part of that motivation is seeing that I am actually coming up out of these restrictions. I'm coming up out of these things that cause me to self-hate and create and box myself in and create those barriers that allow oppression to exist and allow oppression to be exhibited within the community. And so a teacher must be able to do that. And one of the biggest things that we face as teachers as it applies to that is just simply because you know how to do something don't mean you know how to teach it, which is a part of that self-reflective process. Because it's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to be able to guide someone else through that same process. So self-reflection is a way to go about addressing that, because you have to take yourself through the process of what it was that kept you moving, kept you going. And we tend to take these things for granted a lot of times when we think we know something, because it's like simply because I know it, I feel like the next person should be just as easily able to retain it, pick it up and grasp and move with it. But we're not looking at the crystallizations that have taken place that have hindered us. Oftentimes, and without going too long-winded, from an academic level, most people take academics. Let me just say Black people, our people. Most of us a lot of times take academics for granted simply because we tie academic development through a dollar. And then if we turn around and all of a sudden realize that I'm not a capitalist, but I want to be anti-capitalist, all of a sudden academics seem to not have a purpose for me because I was taught it for the participation of being in a capitalist and imperialist environment. So I've attached learning with making money, as opposed to learning as a natural process of a human being. And so now I don't know what to do with it anymore. So we've taken it for granted. So it's going back and teaching a person the tools and techniques of moving forward and getting them to be inspired about the process of that pain that Brother Syke talked about earlier. And he talked about the different types of pain and hurt, one being reflective and one being regenerative. So we have to be able to recognize this and be able to take a person through this and inspire them along the way, so that they can accumulate and build upon all six of these steps, which again goes into the whole repetition.
A revolutionary, and I know y'all hear us. We talking about the reading, the importance of being a teacher, but also the revolutionary is a gorilla. Revolutionary is a gorilla, has to be a gorilla. You cannot participate or move forward as a revolutionary if you don't understand and accept that concept. But you have to know what a gorilla is. And I once read it from Stokely Carmichael. I almost read this from him. He said that when they heard us say we was gorillas, they thought we were saying we was gorillas. He said it's a different spelling and a different pronunciation, and it's a different type of being. A gorilla is an animal. It's big, it's strong, it's loud. And I'll never forget that I was in that when I was on my hiatus, we had one situation with a guard that took place, and the brothers thought that I was gonna be gung ho. I was to jump up. I'm not effing around, and we were gonna march, and it was just gonna be we are gonna set it off, and that's not what I did. I told the brothers, let's all sit down. I was on a place called Choice Moore at the time. I told the brothers, let's all sit down. I wrote I literally wrote a what was called a grievance, and then I passed it to the brothers and had them copy the grievance. Anyway, we followed this legal process that allowed us to get what it is that we was trying to get from the administration, or to stop whatever activity we was trying to stop. That was guerrilla activity, and the brother didn't understand that. I remember he told me, "Man, you the most peaceful gorilla I ever met." That's what he told me, and I say, "Well, that's probably because you never met a gorilla." I said, "You probably seen a gorilla on TV. You probably heard about a gorilla in a song somewhere." I said, "But you've never in your life actually seen a gorilla, because the word gorilla, the one that we're using, comes from the Spanish word that literally means small army. When you have a small army, you cannot fight a decisive battle with a larger, more militarily equipped enemy. That's not the way a gorilla fights. A gorilla understands that I'm small." And I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but this is a quote from one of the gorilla brothers. He said that the gorilla has to operate like a tick, and the enemy must suffer the dog's agony. And that's what Stokely Carmichael was explaining. That when you heard us say gorilla, gorilla, you thought we were saying gorilla. The gorilla is loud, but the gorilla is quiet. The gorilla is big. The gorilla is small. When the enemy wants to fight the gorilla avoids the enemy. He runs. He avoids strengths and attacks weaknesses. And when the enemy wants to rest, the enemy now has to deal with the gorilla, because he has to fight the gorilla on his term. The gorilla doesn't necessarily have the military and technological might. The gorilla takes the military and technological might from the enemy and utilizes it for his or her own purposes. So the gorilla, Huey called the gorilla the perfect man, because he is a warrior and a thinker. This quote you can get from the Black Panther Speaks by Philip S. Forner, page 60. The gorilla can train the youth to protect themselves, their family, and their community. War is a basic fact of life. As long as you exist, there will be someone who is antagonistic to your existence. The gorilla is more than equipped to deal with this. And I'm going to give y'all a few quotes of a gorilla. Kwame Ture said, "The gorilla studies and analyzes. He is humble and organizes the masses, serves the people, and has an undying love for his people." Che Guevara said, "The guerrilla fighter is ready to die, not to defend an ideal, but ready to convert that ideal into reality." And Huey P. Newton once said, "I'm against violence. Violence indicates aggression. I'm for self-defense. Self-defense is the declaration against violence." These are the ideas and the concepts that a gorilla has to be able to move in. When y'all hear gorilla, a lot of time you start to want to think and move like this big, loud, aggressive thing. When you hear gorilla, you should be thinking along the level of moving like a modern day ninja, being able to blend in with your surroundings, being able to move undetected as much as possible, and allow those ideas to be spread amongst the people. Another quote that Huey used, where he talked about the effectiveness of the revolutionary. He said that the revolutionary, that there are a couple of types of people that will go to prison. One would be a revolutionary that will go to prison, and one would be an illegitimate capitalist, a quote unquote a criminal. And he said that when the revolutionary goes to prison, their prison administrators think that they have properly silenced the revolutionary, because they use a mathematical equation when dealing with eliminating or eradicating the revolutionary. Excuse me. They use that mathematical equation. And the mathematical equation tells them that the sum of a thing can never be greater than its parts. So they think if they put all the parts, the arm, leg, arm, head, put all that in a box, that they got everything that made the revolutionary the revolutionary. They have removed that revolutionary's effectiveness, but they fail to realize that the human being is greater than a mathematical equation, because not only is it the physical parts of the human being that made him effective, but it's also his ideology, his ideals. And that ideal cannot be put in a cage. That ideal will stay amongst the mass of the people that he affected before he was placed in prison. Not only that, but he will get contact with other prisoners who have never had a revolutionary thought in their life, and he'll start spreading that ideal, because that ideal is the glue that even holds those parts together and makes it move forward. That's how a gorilla learns how to move. The gorilla cannot be defeated. He cannot be lost, because the gorilla cannot be pinned down, because you cannot destroy an idea. Anyway, y'all got anything on that before I move to political theoretician?
Yeah, let me throw on a new term that a lot of people may not be familiar with. That goes into what we call revolutionary alchemism. And alchemism, from that standpoint, is realizing that I can take various parts and various things within my surroundings, which we refer to as toys, tools of your surroundings, and make them work. See, that even goes into speaking on that fifth element that we talked about within the isms, because oftentimes to an outsider, they don't realize that if I am a master of my surroundings, then any and everything can and will be used for my liberation. The same way how our environment has been weaponized against us. A true revolutionary is conscious of their environment, conscious of all of the tools that they can utilize for their liberation. And so through that, revolutionary alchemiism allows me to be able to use various components to free myself and to free my people. And when we know how to mix things together properly as it applies to that, then we 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 operate on a much higher plane than the average person, because the average person only can deal with things through face value. Whereas when you enter a higher awareness of consciousness, you're able to penetrate the very aspect of the things that people think that they can use against you, because you're operating at a much greater level of awareness. Reason why I bring that up goes into the fact that when we talk about the different systems and like what you was talking about a revolutionary and a guerrilla, is that people don't, and let me break it down this way. Let me just do it this way. A lot of folks are taught to run away from something. Going back to what we was talking about earlier about the car, the vehicle. Whereas guerrilla recognizes the difference between running away and evasion, because running away basically means I need to get outside of your immediate reach. So if I can't ever catch up with you, then I can't get you. Whereas evasion, and I use this from a martial science standpoint, um, evasion goes into the fact that I know how to use my energy and your energy against you to misdirect you. So therefore, I can stand right in front of you and evade you, evade being captured. Whereas running away means I have to completely get outside of your grasp. But evasion, I'm literally right there and you just can't catch me. Every time you reach at me, I slip through your guard. As a guerrilla and as an active collective empowerment person, we have to learn, study, and embody the art of evasion, and that goes into looking at it twofold: what it has to be, how we apply the science of growth, the science of revolutionary action, and how we recognize the pillars of weaponization and how they're used against us. So I just wanted to throw that out there as far as the guerrilla science.
Also must be a political theoretician, which means, and we talked about it earlier, we discussed it, or we mentioned it, that we have to understand that the people, the mass of the people, are not really politically sophisticated. So the revolutionary had to be able to interpret those political ideals. I think it was Bobby Seale that once said that he talked about how Huey was good at breaking down political theory, but he used the technical terms, and the average members of the party didn't understand what Huey was saying, or that the people, when they went out, they didn't understand what Huey was saying. So Bobby Seale or Eldridge Cleaver, they would take what Huey was talking about and they'd explain it in a way that helped the people understand those concepts and those ideals. Fred Hampton did it one time, and it's in the book "The Black Panther Speaks" by Philip S. Forner. It's in that book where he talked about, he explained that he said, I once heard the main man, he said, and I call Huey P. Newton the main man because he's right here in the belly of the beast. He's dealing with this imperialist right here at home. So he has to be the main man. He said, I once heard him say that that the people do not read, that the black community is not a reading community. The people learn through observation and participation. He say, so when you understand that, he say, you have a brother, he's standing on the corner, and the pig roll up on the brother. And the pig walk up to the brother, and the pig say, brother, what do you think about the Black Panther Party? He said, I don't understand it. He said, what you think about socialism? He said, I can't spell it. He said, what you think about communism? He said, I'm scared of it. He said, what you think about that Black Panther Party free breakfast program? He said, I love it and I'm willing to die for it. And the pig says, well, that's a socialist program. He said, I wouldn't care if it's a Martian program. If you put your hands on that program, I'm gonna take your head off. He said, so the brother had been learning through observation and participation. He essentially took what Huey said and he explained it in on a street level way that the average person could grasp it and understand it. And that's what a Panther has to be able to do. A revolutionary has to be able to be a political theoretician and explain complex political theories in a way that the average person can grasp it and it makes sense to their personal reality. They have to be able to do that. There was one time I remember when because as we know that a lot of states have legal marijuana. Where war is at out in California, they have legal marijuana. That's why war is always high because he stay full of that legal marijuana out there in Cali. I'm joking, war ain't always that's a joke. But and so I remember brothers was asking me, they was like, how is a state able to decriminalize marijuana use, but it's still a federal crime? How is that possible? The state is under the feds. And I explained it. I say the states are able to utilize, I think it's the, oh, I don't want to misquote this, but it's one of the amendments of the Constitution. I can't remember which one it is. Give the states the power to make their own constitution and their own laws as long as it doesn't contradict anything in the national constitution. And there's absolutely no rule or law against marijuana in the national constitution. And because of that, the state is able to create their laws and decriminalize marijuana use without the feds being able to run down on the state. Now that case is going through the whole process of going to the Supreme Court, so the Supreme Court can make a final decision on it. But while that is happening, states have the power to decriminalize the use of marijuana, and basically being able to explain that in a very simple way, the brothers understood it because they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the politics of it. They didn't understand how a state was able to decriminalize marijuana, but it's still a federal crime. They did not get that. And that's what a revolutionary has to be able to do. The revolutionary has to be able to be a political theoretician and explain political ideas to the people. Because one of the things we have to understand is the people are more advanced socially than they are politically, and that becomes the revolutionary's job. I'm gonna give y'all two quotes. Now these quotes are not from my ancestors, they from Plato, but I thought they was effective and they made the point. One of them is one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being ruled by your inferiors. That's one quote from Plato. The other one is the ills of the human race will never disappear until by God's gift, those who are sincere, true lovers of wisdom attain political power. And I don't think we've ever seen that before, at least not in this society. Y'all got anything to Panther back on that before I move to the economists? All right. The revolutionary also must be an economist. Now we just gave y'all four. The revolutionary must be a teacher. The revolutionary must be a political theoretician. The revolutionary must be an economist, and the revolutionary must be a guerrilla. These are the four elements that a revolutionary has to be able to manifest. As an economist, we have to understand that freedom is not free. The first thing that you must free on a physical level is your finances. You must study and understand economic concepts. This will give you the ability to create economic alternatives in the community. We go into greater detail of this later, but and this kind of goes into what Wall was trying to explain earlier, that or even the quote from 8 Ball. He said, I was listening to a dread. He was trying to tell me something Farrakhan said. I try to listen because 8 Ball ain't the one to knock it, but I can't hear him from the echo of my empty pockets. So we have to understand not economics, not only to be able to take control of our own economic situation, and we build on this in multiple levels to explain that economics is not just money. Money is probably the lowest level of dealing with economics when you truly understand the science of economics, when you train yourself to think like an economist. And when we deal with the word, it comes from the Greek word economos, which literally means to manage a household. So when we talk about economics on a national level, we're talking about managing the people's resources. And a revolutionary has to be able to understand that and have a clear-cut economic theory. And I'm just going to give you one quote, and it's from Tony Brown. And Tony Brown said, Koreans don't get money from banks when they're starting out. They first work for another Korean and borrow from other Koreans when they are ready to start their own stores. The Confucian morality tells Koreans to refuse welfare and to consider themselves one big family. Blacks should be doing the same thing, but we are too psychologically damaged by racism to do so. So that's why one of the things that we stress is cooperative economics and collective working responsibility in order to get ourselves at least economically out of the situation that we're in. Any one of you brothers want to talk about that before I zoom through these personal characteristics of a community activist? I'm just gonna read these and just roll through them, and y'all can jump in whenever y'all see fit.
I'm good.
All right. Personal characteristics. I thought he wanted to say something. Personal characteristics of a community activist. One, you must be willing to sacrifice playtime for building.
All right, you want to? Okay, I got something on that one real quick.
Yeah, I want to see if y'all had something. Why I
Okay.
got to sacrifice my play? I mean, I like to play.
Well, see, again, this goes into when we talked about the transformation that a person has to take. Because until I'm ready, willingness is one thing, but being ready to change how I view the world, to change how I view self. Until I'm ready until I'm making that step, I won't recognize what sacrifice is. And that goes into the difference between the individual and the collective. Once I'm ready for collective sacrifice, then that won't seem like that big of a deal to sacrifice my personal playtime for building. And then I really am able to embody what sacrifice means. And so therefore, at that point, I don't really feel like I'm giving up anything. And I think that's the big key, is because from the outside looking in, if you're not ready, if you're not in a place of transformation for your own internal development to build and work with the people as a Panther, then your playtime is everything to you, because it's an escapism. As long as you're steadfast in escapism and you've been neutralized of your spirit to evolve, then you're gonna need that. You're gonna need these crutches. You're gonna need these distractions in order for you to cope with life. But once you let go of that condition of oppression, then the concept of sacrificing something is no longer an issue to you.
Two, you must be conscious of how you talk and act. You can't be a walking contradiction. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those things that's hard to talk about because it just fucking is. You know, saying a bunch of words and walking in a different direction, it is confusing. It's not. It doesn't lend itself to one's own personal growth and development, and it doesn't serve as an example to anyone else. And it has to be recognized, I think, that this is, again, approaching it as a process and not an end state. We're all hypocrites of something, of various things. But as a revolutionary, as someone who's growth oriented, part of our job is to recognize those contradictions within ourselves, that hypocrisy within ourselves, and seek to minimize it, to level it out. That's why it's difficult for me to say some things, because if this is what I believe, that's how I have to live. So I can't put it out there and not live that way. It's just not a part of my character. So if I talk about something long enough, I have to do it. It becomes a part of who I am. And that's the mindset that we have to have, that we have to approach even those contradictions within ourselves as an opportunity for us to correct and improve our behavior, not an insult, but to be a walking, living, breathing example of a contradiction, and to be cool with that is completely counter-revolutionary. It's in fact what the enemy teaches us. Again, I can say Black Power and never buy anything from anybody Black, never do anything substantial physically to support that idea. I can just say it. I'm a contradiction. So that's the best I can say.
Let me add to that real quick. I want to just use a current example that a lot of people may be able to associate with. Remember, through the lens of exploitation, we are actually taught to be walking contradictions. We're actually taught that pimpology from that standpoint in the streets. Pimpology is just how I go. In other words, I am supposed to be a walking contradiction, but what I tell you don't apply to me, it applies to you. That's the game of pimping. And an exploitator will embody that element and constantly be a walking contradiction. And so one of the things we have to do is come into the awareness of just how deep it is. It goes and is ingrained in us from niggitude to actually be a walking contradiction. And I think that's the thing about it that E's overlooking, because E hadn't really existed in that ever in that low capacity of state. But so many of our people hide. So many of our people just actually expect that if I say something long enough, then that in itself makes me that thing, and don't realize that the contradiction is the fact that you don't just simply say it and it applies to somebody else, but can't go back into your reflective self. See, again, through being exposed as we have been and damaged and dysfunctional in this society, everybody is a walking contradiction. And so the average person, when they hear you say that, they don't think that you really mean what you're saying, because the game of pimping is to always project this, and that I project it on somebody else who's a weaker mind, and it's not a contradiction because I know you a weaker mind. And me telling you this don't mean that I have to do it. I'm talking about it for you. And see, that's a head game. See, we're taught through weaponization here in the belly of the beast that you are a walking contradiction, and that's exactly what you're supposed to be. And so we have to undo this technology. We have to redefine what things have been taught to us. And I think that's the missing, the part of the thing that a lot of people don't see, is that we are taught to be walking contradictions, but we're taught that that is the correct way to operate. But again, that is how exploitation moves throughout society. And so we're walking not only contradictions, but we're dysfunctional because we don't even realize that walking contradiction is exactly what it is. So I wanted to draw that out.
It's that prosperity gospel. You know, in those churches, they tell you to tithe and sow your seed and all of that and give and give and give, as if they're giving and giving and giving. You see them giving it, but they're steady, not walking the path that they preach about. They're not giving shit. They're taking it all in. You know, they're not being the example that Christ was supposed to have been. They're simply telling you this is what you need to do and give me your money so I can help you do that. And so we become a part of that same, do as I say, not as I do, the way we rear our children. We tell our children not to do X, Y, Z, steadily showing them us doing exactly that. And so, again, going back to the one of Sykes' favorite quotes, you just used it a minute ago. What was it? Observation and participation. Well, participation involves the giver and the receiver. If I'm going to participate, then I have to participate in a particular way because other people are participating in what it is I'm doing. They're participating in my image and my the things that I do. So if I'm going to allow them or be a part of their reality and participate in their reality, I have to make a conscious decision to participate in a particular way because I'm affecting their perception. I'm affecting their participation. They're observing me and then they're participating with what it is I'm doing.
True indeed. Have you heard the word is bond and bond is life? I give my life before I allow my word to fail. That's one idea that come from a community of builders in our community. We heard it on the movie Scarface. He said, all I have in this world is my balls and my word. And I will not break any one of them for anybody. And that's the way a revolutionary has to be willing to think. Their word has to be connected to their actions. When we look at, and I think I've used this analogy before, if you was given the opportunity to have the power of a god, you would probably run with it. We look at Zeus, his power was the lightning bolt. And we look at Neptune, his power was the trident. We look at somebody like Thor, and his power was the hammer. If we had the ability to have that type of power, we would love to grab it. Where the power of the Middle Eastern religions, that God's power is the word. Look at it in the Quran, in the Bible, in the Torah. God creates, builds, and destroys with the word. And if you believe in those teachings, then you have to understand the power of your own word because you are made in the image and likeness of the God. So your words, you have to make sure that your actions and your words are lining up. And the people learn through observation and participation. Huey said that the people must have correct activity to observe and eventually participate in. And as E just said, when you talk about participation, it involves a relationship between the original actor and the person that has been observing the original actor who wants to participate in the activity. You have to be what it is that you say that you are, period, point blank. Three, never allow yourself to be labeled a racist. Hate is an ineffective tool that clouds your judgment. Also, the people have been so shell shocked by racism that they would not listen to you if the enemy can cleverly paint you as a racist and hate monger. You must also understand that this basic point: the people are in love with their oppressors. They will fight tooth and nail to maintain their that misperceived bond. And one of the things that we have to get is three major points which just broke down for this. Not in any kind of love with the oppressor. This is not about that. This is about being strategic. When you're angry and when you're fueled by hate, it clouds your ability to make wise strategic decisions because you have to be able to see what's the best move to make. Example, somebody who just hates white people. Somebody just hates white people will not see an opportunity when the opportunity is toward the benefit of them or their organization and working with somebody white or a group of white people at a particular point. They'll miss the opportunity because their hate is so deep that they'll miss the opportunity to grow and develop because of that. One of the things that I saw, another thing that I saw in the Gulag is that our people wasn't that lost to that degree. When it benefited the blacks as a whole, Crips and Bloods knew how to work together to get to get what it is that they needed and that they wanted as a larger group of black people to get it done, to protect themselves, to defend themselves. They saw the ability to do that. So the hate that a Blood may have for a Crip or the hate that a Crip may have for a Blood didn't stand in the way of that black unity. It didn't stand in the way because the fact is that unity made sense. And so that's one thing. Two, it's not strategic in this society to be labeled a hater or a racist. It's propaganda. They've already made the people afraid of certain ideas, terrorists. You don't want to be called that because automatically the people gonna go in the opposite direction, thinking that they know what terrorism is, not and they don't want to listen to you. So you have to be wise in how you allow yourself to be perceived and it goes back to something that Eve was saying earlier. Some people think all they got to do is say black power. So you got these people running around screaming the devil and black power and think that makes me a revolutionary. And that doesn't make you a revolutionary. That just make you an emotional person that has found a vehicle to express your emotionalism through. And you're not truly being effective. But to read a quote, I'm gonna read a quote from Asada Shakur, and then I'm gonna allow the brothers if they want to come in on it. Asada said, "To hate someone, to discriminate against them, and to attack them because of their racial characteristics is one of the most primitive, reactionary, ignorant ways of thinking that exists." Y'all got some?
Well, I just want to say this, and this again goes to someone operating through emotional instability. If we're motivated, going back to when we talk about a teacher most motivate, if we're motivated through our hate, and that's where we sit, then again, we don't have an intention on how to build our people back up. We don't have an intention on how to correct and address identity of who I am. My identity is not who I hate. My identity is should be based upon my self-love and a reflection of what I know I need to be in order to be able to operate through self-determination. That cannot be ever expressed through my hate for somebody else. And so when we operate on a low level of hate for your enemy, it's going to also turn inward. That's going to also be my self-reflection, which is how we get self-hate, which is how it's so easy from that standpoint to cause us to destroy and kill one another within our community. We don't seem to realize that same hate becomes self-reflective first. And then it is used as a vessel to keep me in a condition of perpetual destruction and a cycle of death as a people. So to me, when I read through that, I have to read in between the lines. We have to be critical thinkers all the way through all processes and realize that I cannot be motivated through any form of hate simply because it is not taking me to a path that is going to correct the damage that has happened to us as a people. Does that mean I need to forgive and forget? The conditions, hell no. It's the very opposite. You have to know what has been done to you and what is constantly being reinforced through the environment towards you, but you don't operate through that vessel of destruction. So I just wanted to make that point.
System is not all powerful. Mumia Abu Jamal taught that not only is the system not all powerful, but it isn't even real. The system is an ideal. This is why we talk so much about ideology. The system is an ideal, and ideals can be fought and dismantled. The system gains its power from the consent of the governed. If the people change their thinking today, the system will change tomorrow. To do some quotes again from the ancestors, Huey P. Newton said, from the ancestors and elders, Huey P. Newton said, the spirit of the people is greater than the man's technology. Asada Shakur said, we would one day be free. The cowboys and the bandits do not run the world. 5, you must check your ego. If you are in this for fame, you need to find a new job. The task is to transform society. Only the people can do that, not heroes, not celebrities, not stars. A star's place is in Hollywood. The revolutionary's place is in the community with the people. That was Huey P. Newton. 6, you must have integrity. You have to draw a line in the sand and refuse to cross it. This is something that Aaron Michaels talked about one of the first times he was on our show. He kept talking about people with integrity, and one of the things he explained is that when he turned over the New Black Panther Party to a particular national leadership, he said that he realized that he had turned it over to people that was operating without integrity. But to quote Sister Soldier, she said, "Whore can be applied to anyone who engages in an activity that they don't believe in, they don't gain from, don't want to participate in, feel violated by, but are forced to do by the limitations of their own mind, the limitations of society, or both in order to survive." Another quote from Sundiata Acoli. He said, "A person is defined by what they do and don't do. I am a revolutionary, a black freedom fighter, and struggle against government oppression is what I do. Cooperating with the government against my people, my comrades, family, friends, and fellow prisoners, or snitching on them is something I don't or will not do." So you have to have a set of principles and ideas that you operate out on and refuse to move from. 7, you must be strong enough to stand for what you believe in. Never break weak. Huey P. Newton said, "I tell the comrades you can only die once, so don't die 1,000 times worrying about it." Huey P. Newton also said, "The ambitious man seeks to dethrone death, to free himself, to control how and when he will go to the grave." So revolution is about freedom, the will to free yourself from limited thinking, personal weaknesses, and destructive habits. This is a person who wishes to be free and share those techniques of freedom with those around him. And with the outro to this, before I close this screen, I'm going to leave with Huey P. He said, "Let us go on outdoing ourselves. A revolutionary man must always transcend himself, or otherwise he is not a revolutionary man. So we always do what we ask ourselves, or more than what we know we can do." So those are the basic principles and ideals that we want to build on. That needs to be in the mind state, or at least needs to be the person coming into the party needs to be willing, able, and ready to apply to their own personal revolution in order for us to create and make a community revolution.